A game every club player should know. In this game, I'm going to be doing an analysis of Benjamin Finegold's game with Nikhil Kumar, however you say it. Forgive me if I pronounced it horribly wrong. I went over this game with a training partner of mine. We both came up with a separate analysis, and then we combined them together and came up with one big one. And we didn't use an engine, and it was definitely an instructive game. Let's just get into it. So Benjamin Finegold started with b3. d5 was played. Bishop b2 was played. Knight f6 was played. g3, e6, bishop g2, bishop e7, knight f3. And I think maybe knight f3 was the first move where we were thinking. We thought maybe e3 and going knight e2 would have been a setup. So knight f3 was an interesting move we thought. And then castles. Here, instead of castles, I think black could have here maybe played c5. So we looked at a line with c5 after castles, c4, striking in the center, d4, and then white has an interesting move b4 here. Undermine this, and say if queen b6 was played, then going b5 and expanding on the queen side. That could have been an interesting option for white. And also if, say, this, after d4, b4, knight c6, we can go b5 with tempi now. So that was interesting to point out. But anyway, in the game, castles was played here after knight f3, so c5 could have been played. And after castles, c4 was played. And now the main difference is here is that there's no pawn on c5. So d4 doesn't really work here. So it may not seem like a big difference when I first showed it, but now you see the difference. There's no d4 here. c5 was played, and now what I thought was a very instructive move. By the way, this game actually has a lot of instructive things. So cd5 was played. Now, hopefully you can take some of this stuff and put it into your own games. So cd5 was played, and now let's look. So knight d5 was played. Now, why was knight d5 played? Well, if e d5, then white here can go d4 and create an isolated pawn. For example, if this is exchanged, say knight d4, then this pawn is isolated. And as you see, we've done this just by taking in the center here and understanding that we can. It's a pattern. This is like a positional pattern that you can try learn. Because after this pawn becomes weak, our bishop's become active, this bishop's a bit more active, this is fairly strong. So anyway, c4, c5 was played, and now after c5, cd5 was played. Knight d5 was played, so maybe stopping that idea, and now knight c3 was played. This knight's quite strong, so it makes sense to trade it off, or at least put pressure on it. Knight c6 was played, and now castles. b6 was played, and now b6 was a move that is fairly risky because you really open up this diagonal, but at the same time it's not entirely clear where you're going to develop your light squared bishop, because you'd have to maybe e5, and this knight maybe a bit loose, so it's not entirely clear where you develop your bishop. So after castles, b6 was played, and now knight d5. And now if e5 was played, and now d4. So taking the same idea, Benjamin Finegold did this great actually. He played very, very well, I think. It's not like I'm completely dodging him. It's like he would absolutely destroy me. But what I'm just trying to do is trying to break down a Grandmaster's game. All the things I'm saying might be completely wrong. But I'm just trying to get better at chess. So I'm just showing what I did recently, just to try and get better at chess, just analyze a master's game. I think Jose Capablanca said you need to analyze a master's game, so this is what I'm doing. Lots of things I say may be wrong, they may be right, but anyway, I'm just trying to use my understanding and try to break down why it may be right, or why I think the move's been played. So d4 was played, and now d4, as you can see, isolates this pawn. For example, if this is taken, then this pawn's isolated, so it makes this pawn very weak. And we've got this nice bishop here, this nice bishop. It looks strong. Bishop e6 is played. I do want to say, try work out a reason why queen d5 can't play. So you can try pause the video and try work out why this move doesn't work. Well, I mean, there's a couple reasons. Well, two main, but knight d4 could be played, hitting this knight and this queen. Obviously, this can't be taken because of bishop d4. Or you may have found knight d5, what I saw first. That's what I thought, and then I realised knight d4 can be played. So anyway, d4 was played. Let's backtrack. Knight d5 takes and d4. Very principled, very basics. I mean, Benjamin really goes over the basics in this game. I like to keep it simple. He really kept it simple. Anyway, after this, rook c1 was played. Maybe stopping some ideas with c4. Say if just a3 was played, maybe c4. Maybe trying to exchange this pawn. I mean, maybe not right now, but just putting the rook on the open file as well. Makes sense. Rook c8. That's a nice move, getting the rook off the file with the bishop looking, maybe x-raying. And now queen d2. I kind of paused when I was doing my original analysis of this game. I paused here and tried to pause the video and tried to pause the game. Well, I just tried to guess the move, actually. And I did actually end up... well, the thing is, with queen d2 was played, it makes sense. Because I found it very hard to find a move here. So I did kind of think, okay, maybe we just move the queen. But I think when we developed the queen to d2, it connects to rooks. It's just... And also now our queen's looking at new diagonals. So, for example, after queen d2, cd4 was played. And now cd4, me and my training partner, we thought was interesting. cd4, knight d4, and now knight d4. And bishop d4 was played. I do want to say there was a line after this. This is a line that I thought maybe. Now, I did look at a line that a knight c6 could have been played. After takes, we takes the rook, takes this bishop, and say takes back here. We take here, king takes, and we can maybe take this pawn, the upper pawn. I'm not sure if it's winning. We can maybe create a pass pawn. Bishops of opposite colors, but we do have rooks. So anyway, knight d4. That could have been the line after this, or we could have played just like queen d3 here, to be honest. So anyway, after knight d4, let's backtrack a bit. cd4 was played, knight d4, and now bishop d4. After also, maybe after queen d4, maybe bishop f6 would have been annoying. So maybe that's why I didn't play queen d4. So bishop d4 was played. Now the bishop's on a nice square, also blockading this pawn. Queen d7 was played, and now a nice move actually was bishop b2, maybe stopping bishop a3 ideas, and also just revealing another attacker on this weak pawn. Rook f d8 was played. After rook f d8, rook f to d1 was played. More attackers. f6 was played. Now queen f4. I think queen f4 is as you're looking to try and maybe win this pawn. You probably don't want your queen on. You don't want your queen on the front square. You normally want your queen at like the back. You normally want your queen to be like the last piece to take, because you can never really take like this because you know the bishop takes. So I thought queen f4. Maybe that was the reason. Bishop d6 was played, and now a queen d2. So now we've actually cut off two defenders of this pawn. Bishop e7 was played. Maybe try and go for a draw. e3 was played. So Benjamin decides to not go for a draw and tries to keep playing. I mean, e3 also controls the d4 square. Stops any pushes. And now after e3, a5 was played. And me and my training partner, we came to the conclusion that a5 was a move. It almost admitted that black doesn't know what to do, because it just kind of creates another weakness on b6. And yeah, it kind of shows that black's a bit lost here. Now, bishop d4 was played. I actually think bishop d4 is a very important move. For example, if king h1 was played after a4, it wouldn't be very clear what we do here, because there's a threat we don't want to take. We probably don't want to push. For example, if we push, maybe this can also be played. Black can exchange their weak d4 pawn for this pawn. So the whole idea is also if you go this, then there's this. You sacrifice the pawn, but you win this pawn. So you don't want to allow any pawn kind of sacrifices or exchanges. So bishop d4 I actually thought was a really good move. I really liked it. I thought it was quite instructive. And now bishop b4 was played, looking to exchange, sorry, bishop b4, as bishop b4 was played. Now queen e2. After queen e2, queen d6 was played, and now h4. I mean, white is just expanding, and the endgame is pawn will probably be better on h4 as it's further up the board. And I don't think there's not really any way for black to really exploit this weakness, so I think it's a fine move. I mean, black can't really do anything about it. Bishop c5, and now this is a very interesting move. It's queen b5, because after bishop d7, you can try pause the video and work out what Ben had in mind, because this is very hard to see. So if you did, it was bishop c5. After bishop c5, rook c5 was played. Say if this was taken, then we can just take back. That's fine. We're up after takes. We can go here, win this pawn. So rook c5. After bishop c5, rook c5 was played, and now queen c5 was rook c5 was played, sacrificing the queen. Let me just go back a tiny bit. So bishop d7 takes, rook c5, and now rook c5. I thought this was such a great move. Bishop b5, but you had to see this when you play queen b4. I think Ben saw this. Rook takes here, and now queen takes d5. Takes, rook d5, bishop d5. But it was kind of a queen sacrifice. Say if the queen went back to c7, you can take, and you'd have the two rooks versus the queen. You're also up kind of two pieces of. I think you're up 2 pawns here. Oh, sorry, you're up 2 pieces of material because the rooks count a bit more in your upper pawn. And I think this would be. I haven't checked with the engine, but I mean 2 rooks. They could definitely infiltrate on the 7th rank. Maybe mop up this weak b6 pawn. I mean, this looks strong for white, definitely. So anyway, rook d5, queen d5, we take, and here king f1 was played, king f8, and now e4 was played, king e7, and now a nice move f4, so really controlling squares here. King d6 was played, king f2 was played, getting the king more into the game, king c5 was played, and now king e3. And now these f5 and f4 and e4, the pawns on here actually play a crucial role because they kind of stop this pawn from being mopped up because of e5 ideas. So h6 was played, and now bishop f7. Nice move because now we can play e4 with e5 without this bishop hanging, because before it was hanging like that. So bishop f7 was played, and now bishop c6 was played. After bishop c6, e5 was played, and now b5. After b5, a3 was played, and now fe5, fe5, and g5. Takes. And now we get into this end game where there's a weakness here. It's not exactly easy to get there though, because this bishop controls the squares, controls the f4 square. And we've got this passed pawn. We've got to make sure that black can't kind of blockade it. And we got these two on two here. So here you can try pause the video and find the move that Ben played to kind of win the game. So I think it's a great move. It's a great move, honestly. So it was b4, check. ab5 was takes, and king b4. I mean, this is really the only move because pawn's advancing. Takes, and now e4, sorry, not e6. And a very important, I think an important move here was king d3. Sorry, king d4, cutting this king off. King a3 was played. That's not king a3. King a3 was played. King c5 was played, really cutting off these squares, hitting the bishop. Bishop d7 was played. King d6, bishop f5, and now e6, bishop e6, king e6. In this position, Ben's opponent resigned. And yeah, I thought the game was actually very good. Ben kept it very simple. It was a nice conversion. And I thought it was just a nice game that followed basic principles, and I definitely think you can I definitely benefited from learning this game, and hopefully you did. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, it would be much appreciated, and have a good rest of your day. Bishop